Hello, my name is Sylvester Henderson, and I am the CEO of Professor for Life Incorporated. I am so honored today to interview Dr. Darrell Norman Burrell, Ph.D., who is a researcher at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Dr. Burrell.
Hi, it's an honor to be here. I've heard about your program. The word is kind of on the street, so I feel that this is a great privilege for me to be part of this process and for you to take your valuable time to include me with the wonderful work that you do.
Thank you so much, sir. Can you, Dr. Burrell, can you introduce yourself to our digital media world? Tell us where you grew up, and please share your academic journey. Where did you attend college, and all those wonderful things?
So I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. I grew up in Montgomery County, Maryland, in a small town north of Silver Spring called Olney, Maryland. I currently live in Northern Virginia, about 48 miles west of D.C., in a town near Marshall, Virginia, Warrenton, Marshall area of Virginia. My academic journey is unique in that I was not a great high school student. I had a very old school father who grew up very, very poor in DC. So grades were everything. So when report cards and grades would come out, I would have a little PTSD and be nervous because if I didn't have the right grades, I'd be in trouble in my household. I've grown as an adult to really appreciate and value my father's wisdom because he always stressed to me a lot of times as a young man of color, the only way you can transcend poverty, the only way you can be in certain circles is through education and knowledge. And I didn't really understand it at the time. I didn't really understand why he was pushing, but his journey was different than mine. He grew up poor, so he wanted to do better. I didn't have his life, so I didn't understand his hunger. And what's ironic about the circle of life is I have the same challenges with my kids in that I want them to be hungry and experience how I did, and they don't see it the same way I did. And so I went to college, failed miserably, wasted my parents' time, didn't really understand the importance and value of education, and flunked out of undergrad, stopped and started 3 times before I got my degree. Did not get my bachelor's degree till I was 30, but had a professor that made me fall in love with learning. And I said, I want to be that person for other people.
Wow.
And immediately 3 weeks after I finished my bachelor's, I started my first master's. And then have been a lifelong learner ever since. I have 6 graduate degrees and 3 doctorate degrees. I've been to a variety of different schools, but what I share with people about it is I don't collect degrees like trophies. I've loved to learn, and I've used the knowledge of those to try to engage, uplift, empower, and help other people.
Wow. Would it be too arduous to ask you to name your master's degrees and your doctorate degree? Because I'm just amazed at the level of knowledge that you possess. That's wonderful.
So I have my first master's degree is in human resource management. I have a second master's in sales and marketing management. I have a third graduate degree in higher education administration. I have another graduate degree in management in healthcare leadership. I have an additional graduate degree in interfaith action, conflict management, and religious studies. And then I finished an additional degree in artificial intelligence with a focus of bioethics, biotechnology. And then I have a doctor of business administration and supply chain where I did research on public health supply chain during the pandemic. I have a doctor of health education and environmental public health. And then I have a Ph.D. in cybersecurity leadership where I did research on organizational behavior. How do we get more diverse women and people of color in cyber? And then how do we think about cybersecurity as we engage with connected devices in healthcare?
Wow. And can you list, thank you, Dr. Burrell. Wow. Can you list some of the institutions that these degrees come from?
So I graduated from National Louis University in Chicago. I also went to Prescott College in Prescott, Arizona. I went to Claremont Lincoln University in California. Um, I went to Capital Technology University in Laurel, Maryland. And then I also attended A.T. Still University, which campuses in Mesa, Arizona, and Kirksville, Missouri.
Wow. Well, you know what? Our listeners are going to be in for a wonderful discussion, which brings me to this question. Can you describe your work and obligations as a visiting researcher for Georgetown University in Washington, D.C.? I know that you do a lot of work around healthcare, bioethics, which is where you pretty examine the ethical implications of decisions and actions in the healthcare field. Can you talk a little bit about some of your work in that field of study at Georgetown?
So Georgetown has some centers of ethics around healthcare out of the School of Medicine. I also work as a faculty member at Marymount University in Arlington, Virginia. And a lot of my research is around technology and ethics in healthcare.
Okay.
So one of the dynamics people don't really understand is we're coming out with these new technologies every day, but I'm a big advocate that we need to manage the dynamics around those technologies. Let's take AI, because everyone is playing around with ChatGPT. But what a lot of people don't consider is there's a dual use of AI. On one end, AI could be great. It can help you write a paper, compose an email, do some things. But on the other end, AI can be threatening, because someone who's a bad actor can try to take AI to help them sequence some DNA to create a pathogen that could hurt people, that could threaten people, that can harm people. And so a lot of what I speak about is we need guardrails and we need protections as we advance these technologies, because just as we get excited about how they can be used for good, they could also be used to harm people or hurt people by bad people. And so I write a lot about that. Another area I talk about is during the pandemic, when people went to the hospital, there was a lot of conversation about, do you have a temperature, before they decided how to triage you. Well, a well-known company that had thermometers that tested your foreheads never used people of color in the clinical trials, and you found out that it had inaccurate readings on people with darker skin. So people were being sent home saying you don't have a temperature when they actually did.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of times when we're developing these new technologies, we're not including diverse people in the clinical trials. We're not including diverse physicians in the developmental stage. And so I do a lot of research and speaking, advocating for, let's bring diverse physicians to the table. Let's bring diverse patients into clinical trials.
Wow. Dr. Burrell, what inspired your initial interest in healthcare and higher education and its societal impact?
So for many, many years, I just strictly taught business. And I always had an interest in healthcare and was interested in healthcare. But early in my career, I worked at Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and I started to realize how healthcare was important. But a lot of times, the things that really bring things to light is, a lot of times for us, especially people of color, is we have a family member that gets sick. And then when they get sick, we're a caregiver, we're trying to navigate around it. My dad's 84 years old. I thank the Lord that he's still around. He's had some health challenges. But just seeing dynamics that just in the healthcare system just really made me become curious, especially on the health literacy side. And so there's a lot of stigmas, myths, stereotypes, and I'll use myself as an example. Before I had my doctor I have now, who's phenomenal, I had a doctor, I went to sit down with him, and I'm a bigger guy, and I sat down with him, and immediately to meet him, he asked me what blood pressure medicine I was on. And I was surprised. I told him I'm not on any blood pressure medicine. And then he immediately went to check my blood pressure, and my blood pressure was perfect. But what he was used to, stories and stereotypes that all Black people, especially larger Black people, have high blood pressure. I didn't have high blood pressure. And what I recognize and realize in this continuum is There are some people that are being trained in medicine that have a level of unconscious bias. There are some of us that are navigating this world where the doctor is telling us to do certain things and we don't understand what that means. We nod our head. We don't want to sound stupid. Or there's this example when you just want to get out of the hospital. So you want to get home real quick and eat some real food. You don't pay attention to the discharge instructions.
That's right.
And I just said, we need to have more people educated around healthcare. And we needed to have people that look like me with voices talking about these things and having these discussions.
Wow. You know what? You just, as you were talking, I was thinking about many of my doctor visits, and man, that is so true. They make assumptions and we tend not to ask questions. And I've learned how to ask questions, but I've learned how to demand second opinions. For everything that happens to me now in the hospital, I don't just go by what one doctor says. It has to be a multiplicity of doctors that agree. And they have to give me a reason and show data in terms of if they say, oh, you have to have surgery. You got to show me why. So I just don't automatically assume that every medical professional has your best interest. I believe sometimes they are intended, but just as in other professions, you have some medical professionals that are top notch and you have some that are mediocre. And it's your job many times to figure that out. However, I want to get back to the topic. As a research scholar, how do you balance ethical leadership with social advocacy?
So it's here's the thing I always say. And a lot of times I teach students in the classroom about some of these issues and we have conversations about them, right? On one end, we want medicine to advance because, hey, we want to live forever, right? And have good health. But on another end, we also have to have guardrails and checks and balances. So I'm a big person on stakeholder engagement, but I train a lot of people around discussions around ethical leadership. And I give them, a lot of researchers, right? People with advanced degrees and Ph.D s try to make this very, very complicated or try to talk to you about some complex theoretical framework that you're scratching your head like, what in the world is he talking about? But I always say like this, when you're in a leadership role and you have to make a decision, ask yourself several questions. If it was in the news, would you be proud of it? If your grandmother heard that you were making this decision, would your grandmother be okay with it? If your kids heard that this is what you did, would your kids still be proud of you and revere you? And if it can pass those tests, a lot of times, you're probably making the right decision. But if it's a test where you don't want it in the news, you don't want your grandma to know, you don't want to tell your kids, as a leader, you probably need to check yourself about those decisions and that decision that you're making.
Man, that's a great way of asking people to think carefully about decisions that they make. As you work as an associate ethics fellow studying morality, integrity, and honesty for organizations, what changes are needed in higher education to improve this area or to improve your area of research around decision making? Or can you think of areas or explore areas, of higher education that needs to improve?
So one of the biggest issues, I think, is the hiring process. I think in higher education has much to be desired. To be honest with you, it's very, very broken. There's a really good book that I urge anyone to read. It's on Amazon. It's written by Dr. Mary Beth Gassman. It's called Doing the Right Thing. And the premise of the book is, how do we dismantle racism in higher education? And the critical thing about higher education, why I say it needs to change, is we're in a climate right now where we need more diverse voices and people as faculty members, as administrators, because students are more diverse than they've ever been before. But if you have a hiring process, and I tell people, the reason why I tell people to read Mary Beth Gassman's book, and don't, these are not exact, but this is me kind of recalling. She looked at the top 300 universities and found out that 75% of the top, and I'm talking about the top research universities in the U.S., she found out that 75% of their full-time tenure track faculty only came from about 25 different schools, the majority of them. So what does that tell you? That tells you, if you didn't go to the same school they went to, if your journey wasn't like them, you're not going to be at that institution. And to me, if all our students are diverse, we need diverse people in these institutions making these decisions of, what curriculum should we have? How should we support low-income students? How should we create safe spaces for women in healthcare? Healthcare is an area where there's a huge issue no one wants to talk about, where female doctors face severe sexual harassment, right? But it's a secret. People don't want to talk about it. But if you have diverse faculty that are female doctors that have had that journey in medical school, they can ensure that we talk about these things or engage these things. There's a thing in nursing about bullying, where bullying is an issue in nursing. Bullying from other nurses, bullying from doctors on nurses. And so the more diverse voices we have in higher ed, the more, if you don't get anything from my perspective, I'm big on diverse stakeholder engagement. Because the more diverse stakeholders you have with their opinion and expertise, the better your decisions are going to be. The more inclusive your strategy is going to be, the more encompassing your strategies are going to be as an organizational leader, as an institution, as a change maker or community change agent in general.
Wow. You have a lot of wisdom. You possess a lot of wisdom, Dr. Burrell, very much so. Can you share your most surprising findings from your research on healthcare ethics?
One of the most surprising findings, so I'm engaged in a research around cyber psychology right now, because I was very fascinated about the misinformation and disinformation during COVID, where people were saying, oh, the virus can make you, the vaccine can make you sterile, the vaccine can cause cancer. There were all these different dynamics around it. And so one of the areas of research that is really a concern with me is not just healthcare literacy, but also digital literacy. Where are we getting our information from? Are we getting our information from Facebook because someone's sharing something that could be a fake made-up story? Or are we really going to credible sources to get our healthcare information? And so for me, I've really advocated recently in my research is we need health departments, we need government, we need respected leaders in organizations, researchers like myself, people like you that are sharing knowledge and wisdom to share information to help and assist people on where to get the right information. Part of the reason why I wanted to come on your show and be part of your show is that you're bringing credible people on that are talking about critical things that are important to a variety of people, regardless of your background and community. And we need more of that, because there's so much false information, fake information that's out there that people are consuming as gospel or creating conspiracy theories that really concern me and scare me and worry me.
You just mentioned something I recently, just actually 2 days ago, I think I interviewed Dr. Byron Price from Medgar Evers College, who's very much involved with prison reform. And when you were talking, I was thinking, wow, I wonder how many prisoners receive unethical healthcare assistance in the system. And unfortunately, the large majority of people that are incarcerated nationwide are African Americans. And so you wonder what type of really support are they receiving Even though they're prisoners, they're still human beings. And so how do you navigate the ethics around that? So, but anyway, how do you see the role of higher education institutions in addressing healthcare injustice? How can a university or a college help to address healthcare injustice?
So I think one of the key things is we have to start teaching these things. You know, the thing that I would challenge is some of the subjects we're teaching and the way we're teaching is very linear and very antiquated. We actually need degrees with courses that engage these topics. We actually need assignments where people go out in the community and really understand these dynamics. I taught a course around health equity, and I gave my students assignment to say, go out in your community with your camera phone or with your camera and take pictures and come back to class that you think describe health disparities.
Oh, wow.
And what was phenomenal about that assignment was it was rich because it was real. I could have lectured to them and gave them 1,000 PowerPoint slides on what health disparities was. But when they went in their community and saw someone who was homeless, right? Or they went in their community and saw someone sitting outside. We've seen those old senior homes where people are outside in wheelchairs and things, and it's hot and in the summer, and they're living in these low income senior homes and they're just trying to get outside. You know, when you see pictures like that, it brings things back to life. The other thing I think is critical is if the larger institutions are not, you know, the larger research institutions are set in their ways or comfortable where they are, I think a lot of the community colleges and minority serving institutions can play a significant leadership role in changing their curriculum to really train people to understand the dynamics of these issues and to train people, because chances are, you know, a lot of their people are going to go, a lot of the graduates from those institutions will essentially go back in their communities and make a difference. But we've got to give them the tools, we got to give them the curriculum that really allows them to understand these ideas. And we've got to start teaching differently. As a professor, I don't give tests in my class in a traditional stance because I don't care whether you can memorize and regurgitate back what I say. What I want to be able to do and see from you is, can you take the knowledge in the book and use it to solve problems? Can you take what you're reading and critically think about what are the implications on society, your community, or people that look like you or people that don't look like you? And so we need to use a lot of experiential learning, a lot of outside of the box thinking, a lot of community engagement if we really want to change people and make the degree more responsive. I think we have a problem where people are leaving with degrees, but they're leaving with degrees that don't give them actionable tools where they can go to an employer immediately and make a difference. You know, it's problematic if you get an MBA and now you have an MBA, but the employer still needs to train you for 2 years for you to be able to be impactful in that organization, right? Something you're learning in that program is not teaching you real world skills that employers need to help you solve problems.
That's right. Wow. How has your research around ethical decision making improved the healthcare field of study?
So I think here's the thing that I've learned about research. I don't think when I do a research project, I don't assume that it's the end all be all. I do a research project to put it out there with the hope and expectation that other scholars will read it, build on it, test, or that it'll spark an idea in someone like you to be like, you know what, I'm interested in that. I want to go pursue that. Or I'm interested in that. I want to understand that better. Because I think one of the things I've learned about my research is if I'm talking about things and explaining things in different dynamics, right? It might encourage another junior researcher or a senior researcher that's been in one lane for many, many years to consider a different alternative.
That's right.
And so I think just like with your podcast, you're putting ideas that are innovative that are on the fridge. This podcast is very, very unique. There's very few things out there that are like that people can consume. But you're giving people knowledge and insight that's both important but not usually mainstream.
That's right.
And what and historically, a lot of times we think mainstream is not credible because most people, when you say non-mainstream, they think you're fringe or conspiracy theories. No, there's still important wisdom and information that activities that you're doing need to be out there and need to be consumed and spread because they make an impact. And so I try to function my research just like, your these important conversations that you're having around scholars and change makers and activists to really spur people to think about things they may have never thought before or engage in processes that they've been a bystander for previously.
Wow. Dr. Burrell, I want to thank you for your kindness, because so many, when I started the podcast about 5 years ago, it really was started out of a need of listening. As a music professional and as a real estate professional and business professional, I noticed, as primarily in the field of education, that whether people had master's degrees, doctorate degrees, community college, four-year college, everybody always complained. And I noticed that the more money people made, the more they complained. And no one sometimes was satisfied with their employment. So I thought, wow, I would like to create a space where people can express and share their perspectives and kind of, in a sense, help to have a listening audience to listen to their perspectives. So I started it. I had a friend of mine and I interviewed one person. I really didn't know that much about what I was doing at that time. And lo and behold, somebody said, Professor Henderson, you're going to be a professor for life. And that's how my name came up, the name of the business, Professor for Life Incorporated. And so I appreciate your kindness, because this podcast means so much to me, and it has touched thousands of people. And so many educators are very grateful, and academics to have the opportunity to share their perspectives. And I am honored that you are sharing your perspective, which brings me to another question. If you were to advise policymakers today, what one reform in healthcare, the healthcare profession, would you prioritize?
So I think the first thing that I will say, and I don't want to get on my soapbox, but I think healthcare in this country should be a right, not a privilege, right? So, I have two philosophies that kind of converge on each other, right? That in order for us to really compete globally, there's two things from a policy standpoint we need to change in this country. Number one, we should be providing health care for people regardless if they have the ability to afford it. And the second thing is we really need to make education free. If we're competing globally against countries where their citizens can go to school for free.
That's right.
And there's two things that can bankrupt you or cripple you right now. One is student loans, and the other one is a catastrophic illness with no health insurance.
Absolutely.
Both can create dynamics that can take the rest of your life to recover from. I know people that have $300,000 in student loans, right?
Absolutely.
So are they ever going to pay that debt off? Probably not, right? So those are two things from a policy standpoint that I think we need to address and we need to engage. As far as healthcare in general, I think, again, the affordability thing's important. Like, we have a huge shortage of doctors in this country. And that's why we have a large influx of doctors from other countries coming here, India, China, whatever, because they're getting their medical credentials there and they're coming to the United States. The reality is medical school is just so expensive right now that people can't afford it. So think about this. The average African American leaves undergrad with $52,000 in student loan debt. That's the average. So if I have $52,000 in student loan debt, and now you're staring at medical school, which can cost $400,000, and then you throw in the fact that medical malpractice insurance could be $35,000 to $50,000 a year when you become a doctor, think about these overwhelming dynamics. I have a student that used to be a graduate student for me when I worked at Florida Tech, who's in medical school right now. And A.T. Still University, where I did my first doctorate, has the Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine. People don't understand this. It's another way to become a medical doctor, and it's different from the MD, but it's just not publicized. An OD doctor can do the same thing that an MD doctor can do, but OD school to become a doctor can cost anywhere from $75,000 to $200,000 less than MD school. But a lot of people don't know that it's an option out there. And the credibility that I explain to people is when President Trump, his first term, got COVID, the doctor that treated him at Bethesda Naval Hospital was a DO doctor. So if a doctor with a DO is good enough to treat the president, it's good enough for you to do whatever you do. So my student, and I share this as a roundabout story, my student had tried to get into medical school and did not have success. So she went to get a master's degree in health administration to make her applications more competitive. And I asked her, has you thought about DO school? She didn't even know what DO school was. And so I said, look at these DO schools, and I wrote her a recommendation letter. And she ended up finding a DO school that, believe it or not, was near where she lived in Florida. So the other schools in the country, she would have had to travel, move, get an apartment. She could stay with her parents while she's in medical school, and she loves it. And the first year she had still some imposter syndrome, like trying to explain to people, oh, it's a DO degree, it's an MD degree. And she's like, did I make the right choice? And I showed her, because she's an athlete, she played soccer. I showed her the sports medicine residency at UNC Chapel Hill. 8 of the 12 residents in sports medicine had DO degrees.
Wow. And
that was all she really needed. So to me, understanding different things, I think policy standpoint, we need to make, these clinical professions more affordable. There are some programs that if you work in rural areas, low income areas, your loans can be forgiven. More programs like that are what we need to get clinical people. But we also need to promote different areas to get where you need to get. Because a lot of people don't know about a DO degree or what a physician assistant can do or what a pharmacist can do. We just don't train people about that. Like, people know what a nurse can do and know what a doctor can do, but those are in a lot of health professions, those are the only things people know about. And we need to train people on other options and opportunities that are out there.
Well, Dr. Burrell, I want to thank you. We have just one other final question. I want to thank you for taking the time to share your wisdom around ethics and healthcare and just intelligence. Oftentimes you hear folks say this person A, person B, they're very smart. But I've learned that being smart, wise, and intelligent are 3 different things. And so you, to me, are a man of great wisdom and great intelligence. And so I want to thank you on this podcast for taking your time to share your knowledge. I want to just ask you, my final thought is that, do you have any ideas or thoughts you would like to finally share with our digital world?
I think the main thing that I would like to share, and this is a plug for you, that if people like this podcast, right, instead of posting fake news and sharing that with their friends, tell your friends about this podcast, right? Oh. And get more of your colleagues and people that you care about or people that you respect to view this podcast and have these and listen to this knowledge, because this is great wisdom. One of the things that I always tell my students that publish is, you don't want to be morbid, right? But if people are at your eulogy, what do you want them to say about you? And then how do you want your legacy to live on forever? I think the thing that's commendable is you've helped people actively, right? As a musician, you've helped people as a professor. But I think this also represents a legacy where you can live on and on forever and ever, impacting people, right? Influencing people. And I think it's important. And so my last word is for people that view this, don't view it in silence in yourself and make it your own best kept secret. Share it with people in your group. I'm sure there's people like me that have 10,000 people on LinkedIn and have a whole bunch of people on Facebook. Share with them, spread the love, let people know that this is out there. I think it's important. I think you're doing important work, and I think more people need to see it, hear it, and experience it.
What a kindness that you have offered me. As a 65-year-old man, you have been extremely kind and supportive. And I want to tell you on behalf of my organization and myself as being the CEO of this podcast, I want to thank you once again for taking your time. I know you are a busy man with many important things to do. You know what? But the fact that you took your time, it is life-changing to me. So thank you once again, sir, for taking the time to come and visit Professor for Life Incorporated. God bless you, be blessed, and we hope to talk to you soon. Thank you again.
Thank you. It was an honor.
Bye-bye now.